You know, as I think about this story in Luke 10 that we talked about Sunday of Jesus sending out his 72 disciples to people and places that they didn't know and didn't know if they're going to be rejected or not. He took them into groups of two and sent them out to do the very things they've been watching him do. The difference was he wasn't going with them. They had to rely on his Holy Spirit. They went out with these instructions that Jesus gave them, and as they listened to what he said and they followed what he said, they went out, and when they came back, they were just overwhelmed with joy because it worked. It transformed people's lives as they talked about who God was and his kingdom, and as they prayed for people. In fact, the statement they made was, they were just amazed. They said, even the demons submit to us. You know, as we listen and we think about that story, I think, man, what a bunch of unlikely people to bring the power of God and to show God's reality, you know, through them. As I thought about that, I thought about in the early 60s, you know, people were not thinking much about God. In fact, the church was dying in most places. Most people saw it as somewhat not relevant, somewhat dead. In fact, in Time magazine, in April of 1966, their cover story was this: that God is dead. You know, all this discussion about God in America, Jesus in America, science has ruled now, and God is dead. But interesting enough, not very long after that, Time ran another cover because something became obvious, and that was in 1971, and it was about the Jesus Revolution. That there were these young men and women who had their lives transformed and revolutionized by this person of Jesus and through the power of Jesus. You know, God was alive. You know, it was kind of interesting because what they would do is that as they encountered Jesus and they experienced his power, they read the Bible and they said, well, you go out and you tell people. That's what the Great Commission's about. They read stories like we just read and about the 72. And as they looked at those, they said, you know, we got to do that. So they went to their friends, they went to their neighbors, and many of them came to know Jesus' experience. And after that, they said, well, who hasn't experienced? Who doesn't understand this? And whoever didn't know, they would just go out and tell them. You know, whoever would listen, they'd tell them and explain who Jesus was, and then God's presence and his power would come and it would transform lives. So that was very common. And they would go anywhere. They'd go to college campuses, and they would go to beaches. They would go to the poor. They would go to prostitutes. They would go to parks, you know, wherever they could. In fact, I realized it actually made it all the way to Kansas. You know, a lot of this started in California, and it made it all the way to Kansas. As I said before, I was a wannabe hippie. I was a freshman in high school in 1974. And I was not doing well with God. I was running from God. My life was a bit of a mess, a lot of a mess. And in that place, I was not interested in God. I wasn't paying much attention to any of this. But and our particular high school that I was in was a really rough high school. It had a lot of people. I think it was like 1,600 in the high school. And they didn't know what to do with us because they ended up having a lot of drug problems. There's racial tensions and a lot of things going on. It was kind of out of control. In fact, to give you an idea, one time in our pep assembly, it was a mandatory pep assembly. The cheerleaders got up front and began doing their cheers, right? The students booed them off the stage, and many of them were in tears. That's how nice a high school we were. So we have another mandatory assembly that shows up that we didn't know anything about, and no one knew what it was, but it's great because you get out of class. It doesn't matter what the assembly is. It's better than going to class. So I went down to the mandatory assembly, and I look, and there's instruments. So it's a rock band of some sort. And then there's these hippies that get up, and they have long hair, so that's good. They usually didn't let them in the school that much. So that was exciting. And so they get up front, and they begin getting the guitars out, and they began singing. And they began singing songs about Jesus. And I thought to myself, oh, this may not fly. They don't know about the cheerleaders. They don't know what might happen here. But the strangest thing happened. When they began playing, no one was yelling, no one was mocking, everybody's listening. And you could feel the presence of God in the place as they talked openly about what they had experienced and how God had changed their lives to Jesus Christ and all that. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness. And then by the end of the assembly, numbers of my friends who I would have never dreamed would do this walked in front of everybody and committed their life to Christ. This group, Love Song, just found places to play and try to express who Jesus was to people they didn't know. And sometimes they were accepted and sometimes they were rejected. And I think about that. If they would have really known what Topeka High was, they could have left and they could have honestly said, wow, even the demons of Topeka High submit to us. And that actually is what happened. See, when we go to people we don't know out of love because we care about them, it's risky. But God backs us with His authority, and He communicates His love through us stepping out to places that are and places and people that we don't know. And He wants to do that. So here's the question: does He still do that? As Christians, as followers of Jesus, when we talk in our mission statement about all people, does that really mean all people? People we don't even know? Are we supposed to go to those people? And if so, how would that look? See, it's probably not going to look like it did in Jesus' time. That's a different culture, a different group of people, and it's probably not going to look like it did in 1974. I don't have enough hair. I can't become a hippie. I don't know how to play guitar. I mean, it'll look different, but the message that Jesus is saying is still go. Go to places that you have. It's risky, but because you love people enough, you go and tell them who Jesus is, and you demonstrate the kingdom and talk about it. You talk about the message of Jesus and you demonstrate it. So think on that. How would that look? Is that even possible for you? What does that mean? How would it feel like to go to places and to people that you don't even know, and how would you be able to communicate, and how would you be able to pray for them? So think about that.